Y buenas noches, gente, a otro episodio de protagonistas del cómic número 41. 41 protagonistas, como siempre digo, 41 creadores de cómic que pasaron aquí por el canal Rayner Reviews, junto a mi compañero de entrevistas, el señor Mario Luzuriaga.
¿Cómo están, gente? Kyle, un placer, como siempre, estar en este hermoso programa que es protagonista del cómic, que ya estamos en 41 entrevistas ininterrumpidas.
Totalmente, Mario. Y hoy tenemos un gran honor porque seguimos dándonos estos gustitos, y a partir de ahora vamos a empezar a hablar en inglés. We have the honor to have our guest here. That's the one and only Mr. Philip Kennedy Johnson.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
How are you doing, sir?
Great, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Well, you know, sir, this show that Kyle's made every single month, it's huge for us, because it's the thing we start this show during the pandemic, so it's an honor to us to talk to our real heroes that you and your own colleagues. So thank you, sir.
That's kind of you to say. It's an honor for me too. It's great to meet you guys.
Yeah. Also, we do this as totally as fans of you and your colleagues, because as I always say, I think you guys don't realize that you're like rock stars for us.
Thanks for saying that. I just got back from Baltimore Comic-Con this past week, this weekend, and I don't know, it's just great, man. It's just awesome to get to meet fans, like wherever the conventions are, and some of them traveled very far to be there, and it's just really fun to talk about the characters with them. You know, like sometimes they're such, you know, like me, they've grown up huge fans of the characters and of those worlds their whole lives, and to get to talk to people like that is just really fun.
Sir, that here in Argentina I have a huge fandom of every characters, Marvel or DC. Here mostly DC comics. Yeah. So if someday you come here to Argentina, you will be thrilled, because the fans here are very, very kind.
I'd love to. I really would. My wife's family is all from Costa Rica, and my son goes down there with her a lot, and so I need to give me an excuse to get my Spanish shit together. Like my Spanish is getting pretty rusty these days, so I need to get my Spanish together and get down there. Like there's a convention in Costa Rica I'd love to do. I'd love to get to Argentina, so it would be a good excuse.
We have some friends here on the chat. Marco Espinosa, he's from Costa Rica. He's
nice.
The man who rescued Superman. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Hello, everyone. People saying hi.
Great to be here.
And we're gonna start like we start every interview with comic book creators. That tell us how you got into comics, sir.
Well, when I was a kid, as a reader.
Both as a reader and in the comic book industry.
When I was a little boy, my dad would bring home boxes of really old, ripped up comic books that he would get at. I grew up in Iowa, like Midwest United States, and he would bring home comics from. They have garage sales there. Is that something you guys do where you are, or like flea markets?
Just a few, but not
a couple.
Not
sometimes,
usually.
Sometimes when people are about to move, or if they're like downsizing or just cleaning house, they'll have what we call a garage sale, where they go out on their lawn and just have boxes of of shit, you know, like that you can get really cheap if you want. If there's some furniture people want, or old clothes, or books, or video games, or whatever, like there'll be a bunch of stuff that people are just trying to get rid of. And so Dad would sometimes buy, when I was a little boy, he would buy a box of comic books for like $1 or something, just like practically free, and just to help me learn how to read. Because he said when he was a little boy, like he grew up in the 40s, and he said that back then he learned to read off of comic books, and so he would bring home boxes of comics for me too. And so slowly I started to build like 3 piles of comics. There'd be like a DC pile and a Marvel pile, and then like a kind of a cartoony kind of pile, stuff like Huey, Dewey, and Louie, or Richie Rich, or Beagle Boys, or Uncle Scrooge, and that kind of stuff. And the DC one it ended up growing more than the others. But I had a lot of all 3, not a lot really, but for a kid, I had a lot. And I loved them. And to my dad, they were just trash. You know, it was just junk to help me learn how to read. But I loved them. And I would make my own comics. I would draw my own and copy the drawings from the ones I really like. If there's a really awesome drawing of Batman or Superman or Spider-Man or whatever, I would try to copy it and try to learn how to draw that way myself. And Dad was actually very disappointed with how much I loved it. I never wanted to give it up, you know? So that's how I got into it. I learned how to read off of comic books. I'm sorry, Mario. What?
You said that you have a big pile of DC comics, right? Mm-hmm. From all the magazines. So do you remember which issue did you enjoy most, or key issues, or some things here there that they were, oh, this is great right now?
I have some of them in the house still. I need to go through and find them. But I don't remember the numbers. I remember Superman 400 was very influential. Because that was the first issue of Superman that was my first issue of comics that I'd ever read. That was like fine art, like high art, where they had all the best people in comics at that time were in that book. It was nuts. I mean, there was a pinup by Bill Sienkiewicz. There was a pinup by Steve Ditko, Jack Kirby, Will Eisner. Just crazy numbers. There was a story illustrated by Frank Miller. There's a story in the end. It was mostly short stories and pinups. And in the back, there was a short story by Steranko, or like illustrated by Steranko. It was really it was almost like a book of the Bible. It described what happened to humanity in the future, like how the legacy of Superman shapes humanity after we're gone.
Yeah.
Gosh, who else was in that thing? The cover, I think, was Howard Chaykin, I believe, like a hand-painted cover. It was really awesome. And but the stories were very unlike other comic book stories that I was seeing at the time. Like I think there was kind of like a house style.
No. Mr. Johnson, wasn't that the cover from Steranko? Or that's issue 600. I think it's issue 600.
Superman 400 is what I'm thinking of. I think it was Shaken. Steranko had a big thing in the back. I don't think he did the front cover. I'll look it up. I'll find out. But it was very unusual. It was this really, really beautiful painting, and I think it was Shaken that did it. But I'll find out. I'm gonna look it up right now. Actually, I'm curious. Is there a way for me to drop?
You can share your screen or something.
No, I've got it somewhere. I'm going to look for it while we're talking.
Okay.
Cover artist.
So it's good.
Howard Chaykin.
Oh, did you find it? Okay. Let me see if I have that comic somewhere. Sorry, forgive me.
Okay. No, of course.
I might not be able to find it. This might be all new stuff, actually. I've got these long boxes in the hallway that I got to find places for. But see, here's my Batman stuff. Sorry, this is going to take too long. Sorry. Oh,
but it's awesome for us. We love to see our guests look into their own collections.
yeah. I'll let's see. Shoot. Yeah. I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't do this now. It's going to take me a long time. I'll be.
No.
Don't worry.
Okay, dude.
Don't worry.
Don't worry.
That issue, I also have it. I got it. I got looking for it, but it's one I got in mind, and I was wrong. You were right. It's Howard Chaykin. It's a beautiful number with a lot of talents, as you said.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing book, and it's. I mean, back then, all the most of the stories that I had back then, it was more of like a kind of a house style of art where everyone. I mean, you could still tell who the artists were if you knew a lot about comics, but the different styles were a little more similar. I was used to seeing I was used to seeing Superman look like Kurt Swan, or see Batman look like God, back then probably would have been what's his name?
Jim Aparo.
Yeah, yes, Jim Aparo, exactly. But I was seeing a Superman story drawn by Frank Miller, and that was the first Frank Miller story I'd ever seen. And it was also very futuristic. It was the whole thing. The theme of that whole issue was Superman in the future, and so everything looked crazy. There were, I can't remember who else did some of those other stories, but the Frank Miller one was the most stylized I'd ever seen a comic story that I remember. Certainly the most stylized I'd ever seen a Superman comic. It was like the most extreme elements of The Dark Knight Returns. Like there were some elements, there were some panels in Dark Knight Returns that looked like an 80s comic book, but sometimes there would be, like when you're showing like the mutants and some of the newscasters that you would see in the little TV screens and everything, some of that was very stylized, and that whole story looked that way. And to my eye as a little kid, it's kind of ugly, and I didn't really get it. And the story is not a simple one about Superman flying in, saving the day, and looking like a hero. Superman himself is not even in that story. It's about a homeless guy who breaks into a government building. It's like a dystopian future. And this homeless guy breaks into a building and opens up an old box and finds Superman's costume and dresses up in it to keep warm. And he finds more, he just looks into more stuff. And eventually he leads this big, without even really trying to, he leads this big rebellion against the dystopian government regime, and saves the day but he also gets killed. And Superman's not in it. And it was not a story that I was used to seeing as a little kid. I'm like, this is crazy. And it just kind of elevated my concept of what comics could be.
And that's the way you later then you apply to your own comic books, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, my Future State issues that I wrote, my first Superman stories that I had on the shelf were my Future State issues. And those are very much a homage to that Superman 400 issue. And that in turn kind of set the stage for what we did with the Warlord saga. And it was this big adventure in space. And it showed Superman it showed the impact he has on the people around him. Like his power, his greatest power is not in the physical stuff that he can do. It's in the way that he affects others, So that was probably the most influential comic I ever had.
Now you mentioned Future State. Future State was one of the few issues published here in Argentina.
Yes,
with the Future State
with
event.
Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. It was called the collected edition was called Superman Wonder Woman Future State, which collected the issues of Wonder Woman and the issues of Superman, and I think it was House of L.
Yes.
Yes.
House of L, the one you wrote.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story that has a lot of potential and makes you think before you read the War Saga. What's the deal with this House of L. That actually it also reminds me a lot of the Twilight of the superheroes from Alan Moore and the House of L, the House of Thunder. It was amazing. It was a great job.
Thank you so much. It was a huge honor to do that book. I wrote out this whole family tree, like this lineage between Superman and that book, to show where, what families those characters come from and how that all happened. And it was a huge honor to get to do it. I have a lot more plans for those characters. I'd love to do more with House of L. But yeah, between the Worlds of War issues, Superman Worlds of War, Future State 1 and 2, and then House of L, those were kind of my mission statement for who and what Superman is, and what we were going to do in my run. If you look in the Worlds of War issues, in Worlds of War #1, it shows these people. There's like a little group of human beings who go to Smallville after his identity. The world knows who he was. The world knows about Clark Kent. And there's this place that they then call Rocket Field, where Superman fell to Earth. And they gather there and kind of remember him. These are people who Superman saved during his lifetime, during his time on Earth. And they get together and talk about how they saw him and what happened, and their theories about where he is now. And they all talk about various ideas about where they think he went, and or sometimes there's stories about how he saved them. And my goal was to have every one of those little stories that they tell be somehow paid off during my Superman run. Like I want every one of those pages to show up in some form in my Superman run throughout my run. So we'll see if I get to do that.
It really felt like that. Those issues when I read it and then read the World War saga, and also the issues from Superman and the Authority from Grant Morrison. It felt like there was a story behind, a full story behind that. It was gonna paid after, but I felt like there are some things that were changed in the way. Was that the situation that you had through? You got to you have to change some of the plot, or you stay
a little bit. I mean, some of it is just because comics are so collaborative in nature. Like there's every story is dependent not just on the writer but on the artist as well, and also on other writers that are playing with the same characters within the same shared universe. So sometimes there are plans that you have. Like if I was to write, if DC Comics was all mine, I would do some things differently, but there's so many of us working at any given time. So it's this big collaboration that's constantly in motion. It's this big dynamic thing.
Sorry to interrupt you. Oh. When they offer you to write Superman Action Comics and everything you did, you have the idea and you told them the idea about what you're going to do with the character, with this plot, because this plot is amazing, because it's not seen. This is the first time we saw this changing things on the character, on all the universe, right?
I'm sorry, what was the question in there?
That was the real plot that you pitch to them. That was the whole idea, or you have to change something about when you start running the story? They
let me do World pretty much as I wanted to do it.
Okay.
It did change. Well, so Grant Morrison was still writing Superman and the Authority when I was putting my own pitch together. I didn't know that Superman would have the Authority with him when he went up there. I figured he might have a couple extra. I figured he would meet new characters on World, but I didn't know he was going to have a whole team. And then when Superman and the Authority came together, we were already leaving John behind as the Superman of Earth. So it kind of didn't make sense for him to leave the Authority behind to fill in for him also. Like John was already kind of filling his role on Earth while he's away. So for him to leave the Authority behind as well, without John's involvement, kind of didn't make sense. And I'm not going to tell Grant Morrison shit about about what he should do on Superman. Grant wanted to use the Authority, so I was like, "Cool, let's do it. I'll figure it out." So I just decided to Superman would bring the Authority with him up there. So that there were my one, not a complaint, but one challenging element to the Authority is that it is a big team. There's a lot of characters. And I had to figure out how to use them all up there. I didn't want to bring everyone up there and then just have 3 that don't really show up. They all have to have something to do that matters to the story. So yeah, that made a lot of subplots. Like there was like the A plot where Superman is very slowly turning the people of Warworld to his side and eventually leading a revolution to take down Mongol and to liberate Warworld. That was the A plot. B plot, there's the super twins, those 2 little kids.
Yeah.
Who, again, at first, like everyone else, when Superman shows up, to them, Mongol is Superman, and Superman is the enemy. So they hate him when he first shows up.
Oh, right.
And then he very slowly has to he shows them how to be heroes, like what it is, what virtue is. There's also the story with Light Ray and Omak. There's the story with Apollo and Midnighter. Like Midnighter is basically the only guy that gets away, and he's leading this big revolution in the alleyways and shadows on Warworld, while Superman is leading by example and showing that you don't have to kill anybody and not to do what you're told and to show that your chains should be destroyed. You don't want to, like, these are not symbols of strength. These are symbols of oppression. And you need to take these off and break them. And he's the unblooded sword. They call him the unblooded sword as an insult because that's what they call people when they can't get a hit on their enemy. But he takes it as a sign of virtue, a sign of like a sign of pride, because he uses it to break chains, not flesh. Meanwhile, Midnighter is killing his ass off in the alleys of Warworld, like actually starting this rebellion in Superman's name, and he's super violent and killing everybody. But it's an essential part of Midnighter's character, and it's also an essential part of that rebellion. I like the idea that the rebellion kind of builds up in part because of Superman's example, and also because of Midnighter's dirty deeds in the shadows. So anyway, there were just a lot of moving parts to that story. There's so much that we had to do. And because of that, I just kept kind of stretching it longer and longer. They didn't want him to be gone quite as long as he was. But they gave me all these characters and made me use them. And I didn't want to send them all up there and then not give them all their own story. So anyway.
Yeah.
But you gave us a true epic story that we haven't read in a while, because as I see it, it was a story with a lot of homage to the Exile Saga, a lot of homage to Planet Hulk, for example. It has a lot. It has a lot, and it was so huge that now I think it's gonna be collected in one hardcover deluxe edition. The 3
it should come out. It comes out in the States in November. It's gonna be. It will not be hardcover here. But it might be there though. I think it will be in Europe. I'm not sure about South America, Latin America. But here
we have the same.
We have to ask
the
to
same
our
trade
friends
paperbacks than you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, in Europe they have the Panini editions. Those are amazing.
Yeah, here in Argentina we have the Omni editions, because Omni is the license to print the DC here. So we have they put your run of the Future State in our shelves.
Nice, good.
Also, there's another question I have from reading the comic books. Is that from the beginning of your run, it felt like Superman was going to die.
Yeah.
And it was like at the end, it was like, okay, I know it's not gonna happen, but maybe it was supposed to be that
Well,
way.
I was never going to kill Superman for real, but the part of the in Future State, it showed that Superman, they were like Mongol was killing Superman over and over and over again in the arena, and like he would kill him and then resurrect him to kill him again, and this was this ongoing thing. And even though he was doing that, Superman would continue to free. He would keep fighting and never stop, never quitting. You know, he knew inevitably that the slave that he saved would then later be killed by Mongol. All he could do is just free them over and over again. And he never stopped trying, you know. And that's how we saw over time. We saw at the very end, we saw that the people in the audience were he was winning them over, like giving them hope and inspiring them to finally like hold up. Like you see them holding up their broken chain as a symbol of pride and strength. So even though it looks like he's just getting run over and over again, he's just playing the long game. He's sacrificing his own life over and over again for all of us. We ended up not using that, or at least not showing that element in the Warworld saga, because it was just making it just added another complexity that we didn't really have the space to show. We didn't actually use the resurrection element in the actual monthly book. But anyway, it's so in a way he does die, and it kind of suggests that first time when I think it was 1038. I think 1038. I think he it looks like Mongol executes him.
Yeah,
and then throws him into the dungeon, and it's in my headcanon. He does kill him and use Genesis to resurrect him, but it doesn't actually show it because it just kind of introduces all these other questions like, well, if they can do that, why not do these other things? So we left that element out of it. But in my headcanon, he gets killed in that issue. And in the future, where John is with Legion, that's what John is referring. Jonathan Kent, when he talks about Superman getting killed up there, he's referring to historical documents from 1,000 years in the future that say that he did die up there. So anyway, yeah, that's where that idea kind of came from.
Oh, amazing.
Amazing.
What an amazing fact.
It's amazing.
Those are the facts that we love to hear, you know.
No, thanks.
Yeah.
Mario, any question about it?
Well, going backwards on your career, I'm a huge fan of a character that he hasn't have powers. He has gadgets, and he's a super spy, and his name is Bond, James Bond. How was working on that amazing character like Bond?
Oh, well, thanks for reading. It's really fun. It is also challenging because every Bond story or every Bond movie, certainly, but also the books, I think, are time capsules. They're very much of their time. And Bond is not Superman. he's a very flawed character, right? And in the 1950s, he was intensely flawed. He when they came to me to write a Bond story, I asked, well, is this license based on the films, on the Bond of the films, or Bond of the novels? And they said, this is Bond of the novels. So he's not going to look like Daniel Craig. He's going to look more like he is described in the original books.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, when is this? So they said it has to be like the Bond of the novels. So I said, okay, well, what year does this, what time setting does this story take place? Is it modern day, or is it back then? They're like, no, it's modern day. Like, okay, well, if you want me to be true to the original character, then Bond is like a sexist, racist, homophobe, misogynist. Like there are a lot of things that he does that you wouldn't be able to. The way he speaks is not the way you can speak now. You know, like he would not be the hero of the story. You know, if this was if I try to put a 1950s hero in a modern setting, it's going to be rough. Like, so how do we do that? So we have to kind of be true to that character without some of the rougher elements. Like in that original books, he described when a new character enters the room, Bond describes them by their perceived ethnicity. Like if he thinks they're if he thinks they're Jewish, or he thinks he'll like in walked a broad-nosed Swede or something like that, or a suspicious-looking Jew, or like just really like just gross things. You know, you just can't talk that way. And the way he treats women is just gross, right? So like, how do we do that? So I had to figure out how to treat Bond like what is Bond? Like, who is Bond at his core without all that other stuff? What is he? And something that I saw in common between the movies and the books is that sometimes he calls himself a blunt instrument. He considers himself just like a blue collar killer. I mean, he's extremely skilled.
M told that in Casino Royale.
Right, exactly.
Judi Dench says, "You're not just the blunt instrument."
Yeah, right. Yeah, that showed up in that movie. And there's other times where he talks about himself that way. He even though he's very skilled and he's educated and he has military service, he considers himself just like a blue collar worker who just happens to kill people. Instead of plumbing or being an electrician or being a driver, he's just a guy who kills people. And that's kind of how he makes it sound like he talks about like it's not a big deal to him and it doesn't affect him and doesn't bother him. But through the events of the story, we see that it does. Like over time, it does impact him, you know. And he kind of has this bitterness towards thoughts of patriotism or just the world in general. He's just kind of dark on the world. And those are the elements that I wanted to kind of focus on. So the way he perceives people, the way he treats people is all very different and not at all like the old stories. But his view of himself is the same. He's still kind of, he has regrets, and he tells himself and others that it doesn't bother him to commit murder, but it does. Like he kind of buries all that underneath, cigarettes and booze and women and travel and fast cars and everything. He's burying that trauma underneath all this stuff that he perceives as cool, or just the stuff that he kind of collects to cover up that trauma. So that makes him a really interesting character. And I wanted to see, in my story, there are changes I wanted to make though. Like I didn't really, like when Bond, in most Bond movies especially, he's not really a spy at all. Like he walks in, he gives everyone his real name. He goes right for the target's girlfriend. Takes her home, kills a ton of people, blows a bunch of shit up, makes a huge mess, just attracts all the attention on himself. Right? He's like the anti-spy. Yeah. Spies are supposed to be boring and they easy to ignore, and that's Bond is anything but that. He's a special agent. He's not really a spy. And I asked them if I could, when I did this, is like, can we introduce some elements of actual spycraft into this and make this more like an espionage story, more like a John le Carré novel? Like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, or the Spy Who Came In From the Cold, had those kind of elements of spycraft. I've never really seen Bond work from the shadows.
More like George, the name of the spy from le Carré.
Smiley,
George Smiley, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted to see a Bond that actually works from the shadows. I want to see the spycraft that he must surely know. I want to see him use some of that stuff and not just blow everybody's head off all the time. So they let me do it.
Did you put something about you said that he kills, but he didn't like killing everything. You put something of the background of his dead wife in hands of Blofeld, or or you didn't put anything about his past and his relationships?
I didn't put anything about that in my comics.
Yeah.
The character, I introduced a new character in these comics named Gwendolyn Gann, 003, who is his she's his big, when he first becomes a 00, she is a previously established 00 who's like kind of had this legendary status, and she kind of becomes a mentor to him, because we almost always see Bond with women that are much, much younger than him. There's a line from one of the novels in which he describes a woman that he's about to take to bed. What did he say? That he said she was 10 years his junior and 5 years too old, or something like that. Yeah. And I was like, well, what, we never really see Bond with a woman that's his age or older. So I wanted to introduce a woman who's just a couple years older than him, who's already kind of a legend by the time he shows up. And so she becomes a lover, but also he holds her in the highest regard. He has a great deal of respect for her, and she's as badass as he is, and is actually she kind of uses people sexually the way that he does too. So very much like a mirror image of Bond in a lot of ways. Someone that kind of teaches him how to do this job. And she becomes kind of the main character of that story. The first 6 issues is about, in the first issue, we see her in theory, she's killed, and the whole thing is like a big revenge story, like with him trying to get justice for Gwen Gann. And we see a lot of flashbacks with the two of them, like how their relationship came to be. And she was the patriot when he was already kind of jaded and bitter about stuff. She was the true believer. She was the one who did it for king and country. And she kind of helped inspire him to be more than he was, better than he was. And so then when he has to kind of, when she's gone, he kind of tries to step it up and remind himself the reasons that he first signed up to do this job in the first place.
You sold me the movie, sir.
What's that? Sorry?
You sold me the movie. I want to see that movie.
I want to see the movie right now, please.
No, the comic's wrapping up.
Talk to Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, please.
Yeah. Hopefully they read the comics.
Yeah. Pitch the story, please.
Please. It's amazing because it's a real comeback to Bond after Daniel Craig. It's amazing run of movies. So. Yeah,
I love those movies. Those are my favorite Bond movies.
Yeah,
I mean, I do like Sean Connery in the role a lot. Those movies are just so dated, man. Like every movie is just such a time capsule, very much of its time. Yes. And sometimes it's hard to watch now. I mean, stuff like it's some of those old movies that were just fine in their day. They just seem so racist now or sexist. Like there's just a lot of stuff in it that's just a little cringy.
Well, we with Kyle, we grew up with Timothy Dalton, but our Bond was
that's our Bond.
Pierce Brosnan, and then Daniel. Of course, my best Bond for me is Daniel. So
yeah, man, I love him. I know not all the Daniel Craig movies are great, but the best ones are the best ones. I mean, the best Daniel Craig ones are the best movies in my opinion. Like I love Casino Royale and Skyfall.
I love it.
And both I was pretty happy with the last one too. I thought the last one was pretty good.
When this started with All the Time in the World, I said, no, don't start with this song in the beginning of the film, please. No.
Yeah.
So well, I'm a huge Bond fan.
And speaking of movies, you like horror movies. You like horror. Actually.
Yes, I do.
And you got the chance to work on Alien.
I did.
For Marvel. You launched the title when the rights got back to Marvel.
Yeah, I found out along with everybody else that Marvel got the rights. There they are. Look at that. I found out with everyone else that Marvel got the rights to Alien and Predator. And I shrieked like a little girl about it. I was so excited. was so excited about it, man. And I assumed they already had a team in place to write those things. But I reached out to my Marvel Zombies editor at the time, Jordan White. He later did the X-Men stuff, but at the time he did Marvel Zombies with me. And I was so excited about this. Marvel had already done Conan, and they also had a couple of spin-off series that they did after that. So I thought maybe I could get one of the spin-off series. So I reached out to Jordan, really excited and kind of aggressive about it. I was like, you know, I just kind of kicked the door and I was like, give me this book. Like, I know more about Alien than anybody you've ever met. Like, I can tell you, I can answer, ask me anything right now. I'll tell you anything about Alien. And he was just like, wow, like you're really into this. And I never do that. I never reach out to editors for books, but I did ask for that one. And I didn't know, but behind the scenes, somebody in Marvel was already kind of pitching me somebody behind the scenes was already suggesting that I do that book. And I didn't know that at the time. I just called up and I was like, you got to let me do something with Alien. I'm the biggest Alien fan you've ever heard of. And they're like, okay, pitch us. Like, what do you want to do? And I walked in there with like an encyclopedia with my glasses on my nose. Like, here's what you should do. Here's what Dark Horse did wrong. Here's what we're going to do right. I'm going to do this. And they liked it. They went for it. So it worked out.
And you play with the Colonial Marines. So
yeah, right. Man,
it's amazing.
Yeah, I love Alien so much. I do like the Dark Horse comics. Some of them are amazing. They did get very creative over time. They strayed further and further from the movies over time, in my opinion. And they started to feel like they were not the same story. Like I felt Alien movies were in this place in my heart, and the Alien comics were over here, and they were not the same thing. So I wanted to make Marvel Alien comics that felt like they belong on the shelf alongside the films. So that's what we tried to do.
And what another horror franchise do you like, sir?
Other horror franchise? I mean, Alien is probably number one for me.
Yeah.
But aside from Alien, I would say, you talking in film?
In film. Like maybe you could have the chance to write.
You work with
another.
It's not film exactly, but The Last of Us, the game.
Oh,
the TV series.
I could write the shit out of that book. So yeah, Last of Us for sure. I love the show. I love the game. That's one of my favorite games ever. Probably, maybe my favorite.
It's amazing. Yeah.
That might be my.
You know that the music it was composed by.
I have it on LP in this room. Yeah.
So Gustavo Santolaya, if you're watching this, please contact me.
Oh my God,
Kennedy
I love
Johnson,
that music.
please.
Yeah, I've got it in here. Hold on. I've got here it is.
Se le están pasando bien, dejen su like, por favor, gente.
Dejen su like, gente. La verdad que está buenísimo. Look at that.
Isn't that beautiful? God, I love it. I don't usually write to music, but I do have the Alien LP score. I have the Alien score on record, and I have the Last of Us score, obviously. And I do write to those. When I was writing Alien, I would sometimes listen to the original score or the Covenant score on LP as I write. And sometimes when I'll write other kinds of stories in which it fits, I'll listen to the Last of Us score on LP. So
anyway. And your passion for horror also was applied to what you're writing right now, Hulk.
Yeah. I sadly I had to give up Alien because I was just so overworked. I felt the time coming when I was not going to be able to do my best work. I was falling behind and just not sleeping and just doing my best to keep up, but it's not good enough. So I finally, after 2 years on Alien, we did 18 issues, I think, plus the annual. So like 3 solid arcs that I was very proud of. And I had to tell him, I was like, I think I should step away. Like and pretty soon here I'm going to be falling on my face. I should step away while they still want me to stay. And it was hard to do that, especially because that was my only Marvel book at the time. So I was kind of shutting the door on Marvel, which I didn't want to do. But anyway, then right after I quit, like right after that, I got a call from Will Moss, like, "Hey, I know you're busy, but would you want to do Incredible Hulk?" And I was like, "Man, what do I do?" Because I wanted to do it. I'm not the kind of guy that reads every run of Hulk. I don't love every Hulk story.
Yeah.
But some of the great ones are legit great. I love Planet Hulk. I loved Immortal Hulk like crazy. I thought both of those were just terrific.
Oh, here in Argentina, the run of Immortal Hulk is very popular right now.
Really?
Very, very popular. We have here a friend, a colleague of us, Demian, that he loves that story. Right?
Al Ewing did a great job.
And you, love it.
Oh. Thank you. We love it here too. I love it personally. Like I think it's great. It's such an effective Hulk as a horror story is just so effective. I feel like every Hulk story to come has to at least lean that way a little bit now, because I feel like it's kind of changed the Hulk's trajectory forever a little bit. Because Donny Cates wrote Hulk right after that, and steered away from that hard. He was like, well, Immortal Hulk was this amazing horror story, so I'm going to do something that's completely different from that. And, it was very much a Donny Cates kind of story.
Yeah.
But people were like, we want Immortal back. Everyone just like loved Immortal so much. So when I got the opportunity to take over after Donny, I was like, they knew what they were asking for when they came to me, right? They asked me like if they wouldn't come to me for a happy romance story. You go to Philip Kennedy Johnson when you want something gross. so I channeled all my alien powers, and I was like, okay, well, what do I do? The hardest element of it was to not just copy Immortal Hulk, because it was perfect. Like, how do I not just do that again? Because I don't want to just copy somebody else's approach. And in the end, I kind of sat with it for a minute, and I thought about what I could do. And I found myself coming around to Hellboy a lot. I really love Hellboy stories. I love the whole Mignolaverse, the BPRD stuff, the Abe Sapien books, but Hellboy especially. I think those are just incredible stories. I love the way that he just kind of walks through the world of folklore and myth, and these crazy, creepy things find him, to which the rest of us are blind. I just love those stories. And I wanted to kind of take it back. Plus, after the Donny Cates run gives us a very clear reason why Hulk and Banner could potentially hate each other now. Like, Hulk deeply hates Banner now after the events of that run, where Banner had him enslaved in his own mind and was using him like a vessel. So now it gives us an opportunity to get back to the very earliest roots of Hulk, where he was supposed to be like a movie monster, like Frankenstein or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I started thinking about more modern monster movies like Smile or The Ring or It Follows, those kind of things, where the monster is the thing that stalks the hero. And I want to see Hulk like that. I want to see a Banner that is not, we've already seen the whole, like, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry thing, where, you see a guy, just a skinny guy walking, and then somebody messes with him, he gets in trouble, and then Hulk emerges really angry and just takes care of it for him. I want to see where Hulk is the monster of the movie, and he's stalking Banner. So instead of a story about being angry, this is a story about somebody who's afraid. About somebody who is like, anytime he gets too close to a moment's peace, or if he makes a friend, or if somebody's nice to him, or if he finds love, or if he's about to get the thing he's been working towards,
So you're trying going back like the TV show, like Bill Bixby, right? That kind of
yes.
Of Banner, right? I love it. I really love it.
Banner on the road, yeah. This Banner,
the piano
thing.
thing.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, he's a wanderer again. He's somebody he can't have nice things. He can't have a home. He can't have just a job and a normal life. It's like my Hulk story is more like a metaphor for addiction. Like all of us kind of have that side to ourselves that we're afraid of. Like, if only I could get this addiction under control, I could have everything I want. If only I could get my rage under control, or my gambling addiction under control. If only I could, sleep at night and get up in the morning, or if only I could, not be so stupid about whatever your thing is. Everyone's got something that they want to fix or change or hide about themselves. And that's what Hulk is for Banner. So anytime he gets too close to having a moment's peace or happiness or anything like that, he sees these green eyes in the shadows, and he runs, and he blacks out. And when he wakes up, everything's destroyed, and the sirens are going, and dogs are barking, and he has to just run again. So that's what this story is now. It's like he's the movie monster.
Also the representation in the comic book, it's very horror-like movie. I remember one of the scenes with the smoke and the arms grabbing the guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And you only see his arms and pulls the guy. And very horror movie. I really loved the take on you're doing on the Hulk. It's a good. I think it's a good point one or jumping on point to new readers, because if you read Immortal Hulk and didn't read the Donny Cates run, maybe you can jump on Phil Kennedy's Johnson's run.
Yeah, I hope so. I want this run to be very. Also, I like that. I know the scene you're talking about in the Ed Norton movie where the arms come out and grab him, like then the bottling plant. This is in Brazil, right?
Yes, in Brazil. Yeah,
because he's training with one of the Gracies. I was like, I saw him train with the Gracies. Like, oh shit, I know that guy. He's like the greatest Brazilian jiu-jitsu player ever. And then he's like smacking him around. I'm like, damn. I wonder if I bet he really did that too. I bet Gracie really hit him. Anyway. But yeah, when they're in the plant and he goes like, leave me alone. And it's so low. At first I didn't realize he was speaking.
Leave me alone. Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't even tell it was words at first.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. That's exactly what I want this to be. And when we were doing when I first got the lettering pass back on the first issue, Hulk's dialogue was just black print on a white balloon, like normal, like everybody else. And I said, he just kind of when I see that stuff, I hear it in my ear, and he just sounded like he was talking like everyone else. You know how in Endgame it's just Mark Ruffalo's voice? He just sounds like a normal guy. I hate that. I want him to sound different.
Yeah,
and,
it's a monster thing like that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, whenever you see Thor in a comic, it has that really old-timey, like archaic looking font that makes it look like you're reading an old myth. Like, why can't we do that for Hulk? So I asked, can we change Hulk's font, like the way his balloons look, and make it consistent in every issue so that like it looks distinctly different, so it sounds like just like stones rubbing together. Like with that, but like poison with gamma, and so and then the letterer Corey Pettit is doing incredible work, and he was super game for that. He was all about doing that. So in that first issue, there's the moment where on the big 2-page spread where he transforms.
Yeah,
there's that one, the first full one that we see Hulk. He says something like, "Banner's mine." Corey sent back that frame of Hulk like down on all fours, kind of. He's like, "Banner's mine," and he had the word "Banner's mine" like 20 different ones all the way around Hulk. And we got to kind of vote on which ones we like better. Like let's use the element, let's use the lettering from this one, but the outline for this one we can thicken it up a little, and we just kind of closed in on how to make it look. I want it to look so cool, like sound so cool, that everyone has to use it from now on. I want it to be just like this important element of the comic, so that anytime Hulk appears in somebody else's book or whoever writes Hulk after me have to continue. Like the way Todd McFarlane made Spider-Man's webbing all complicated and gross looking. Because before that, before Todd McFarlane, the webs were just like a bunch of straight lines with
Just
gray.
lines.
Yeah.
But then Todd
Yeah.
McFarlane put all this love into making the webs look sticky and complicated. And now everybody's got to do that because it'll just look so much better. I want to do that with Hulk's lettering. I want Hulk's voice to be clear and consistent throughout Marvel from now on. So we put a lot of love into that.
And what can we expect in the future of the series?
There's going to be constant jumping on points. All the arcs are going to be extremely short. So like we have issue 1 is just like the statement of faith. It's like, here's what it's going to be. Like the premise, like the pilot of the show, right? That's just issue 1.
Yeah.
Issues 2 and 3 are one arc that end right there.
Yeah.
That's about Brother Deep. Issues 4 and 5 are one arc with art by Travel Foreman. The whole arc is drawn by Travel. That's about the Swamp Witch. And then issues 6, 7, and 8 are one arc drawn by Nick Klein again, the guy that did the first 3 issues. He's that's about the War Devil and World War II Ghost Rider. Yeah, we're introducing a new Ghost Rider on an old Steve McQueen era motorcycle.
Like the Great Escape.
Yeah,
nice.
Like the Great Escape. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's gonna be dope. So yeah, that's so every arc is gonna be either 1, 2, or 3 issues, very, very brief. Because I mean, my love of comics mostly comes from a very I talked about all these big stacks of comics when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Really, they're only like I had like 4 stacks, maybe this tall. And that was it. That was everything I owned. And mostly they were completely destroyed. Like they were like, some of them didn't have covers. They were just not in good shape. I didn't know what bags and boards were. They were just I just had them on piles. So they're in terrible shape. But and very few of them are consecutive. So usually I would just have one issue by itself. And then there would be another one like 20 or 30 numbers later, there'd be another number. Like I had a lot of World's Finest, Batman, Superman, or Brave and the Bold. Had a lot of Marvel team ups. With
I started reading with Brave and the Bold. I started reading with the Brave and the Bold.
Those are great.
If you recall the cover, what the team up with Batman with the unknown soldier in the Lincoln Memorial.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Remember that cover that Batman is teaming up with unknown soldier.
Yes,
at the
I
memorial.
think I have that one. I have that one. Yeah.
So that was my first comic book.
No shit, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, right. And then the 1989 Batman movie and Superman Man of Steel.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome.
Love it.
Yeah, I have that issue. I have an issue of the Batman family, like an 80-page giant or 100-page giant, where they had they were in an anthology series where there would be like a Batman story, and then there would be another one with, Batgirl or Robin or, Alfred and somebody or something. There's I remember an old story where, let's see, I think it was Batgirl and Robin. This is when Robin was like 20, so he's all big and jacked. He's still got the little green panties.
Yeah.
It's Batgirl and Robin fight Benedict Arnold, I think, like the great American traitor. Anyway, whatever. Like I have a lot of those old comics, but I have very few that are consecutive. Mostly it would just be one issue, and then I wouldn't have any others until much later. Every now and then I would have 2 that rubbed up against each other, and that was awesome. So whenever I had a comic where
issues.
What's that?
Talking about issues, we have here. We have to talk to you a little story here from Argentina. After Crisis on Infinite Earths, in Argentina they start publishing all the other the new characters, the new runs, Batman, Man of Steel, And we have here the Flash. But here the Flash by Mike Baron. We couldn't. They couldn't publish as the Flash. So we had to change the name.
Is there another character in Latin America named the Flash? Is that why?
No, because in that time, in the early 90s and late 80s, early 90s, there was a gossip magazine called Flash.
I see.
So they changed the title.
To what?
Please, Kyle, show him. Show Mr. Johnson the title.
What? Oh my God. Hold on. Let me take a photo. That's amazing. What? Is that really the best decision we could make?
This is something that we're kind of proud of, ashamed at the same time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we have
entire
branches of government like that up here.
This issue was shown to Jeremy Adams when he was here on the channel speaking
Jeremy's
with
great.
us.
I'm sure he'd be laughing his ass off, right?
And Jeremy was so thrilled and so amazed with it that put it into canon. He in issue
781.
Yeah, Flash came to Argentina, and one of the kids called him Flushman.
That's awesome, dude. That's great.
It's amazing.
Great,
it was something that.
So we told.
Jeremy's just a joy to talk to. He's a really nice guy, and he just has a lot of gratitude for getting to do what we do, and he's just so excited all the time. His whole personality, like the way his hair kind of sticks up, like his personality is like that. He looks just like he should.
Yeah.
No, he's just a very happy, kind guy.
He put the Flushman and they did canon Flashman here to DC. So we told the story. It's amazing.
That's amazing. He should. That's what you're supposed to do. That's good.
And now we spoke about Jeremy Adams. You work with him in Green Lantern, and you're gonna be part of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just got the comps for that today.
So what can you tell us about this new take on Jon Stewart after for some of the fandom a difficult run on Jon Stewart?
I think Jon Stewart is the consummate Green Lantern. I mean, to me, a lot of the other Green Lanterns that we have seen, even the really great ones, like Hal,
Kyle Rayner.
Yeah, and exactly. Kyle was one of my Emerald Twilight was one of my first Green Lantern stories. I mean, well, that's not true, I guess. I had some really old ones, but that was the first one that I bought like off the shelf. Like one of the first new comics I bought off the shelf was Emerald Twilight by Ron Mars.
Love it.
And I love the idea of a comic artist becoming a Green Lantern. It just made a lot of sense to me. I love that character. But that the Guardian found him almost by accident. The Guardian was like, "Oh, yes, you'll have to do," or whatever he says. And he ends up being one of the greats. But he was what we call here a dark horse pick, where it's not, we don't necessarily see what the Ring sees in them. Like why we don't get what makes them special right away. And then we kind of learn over time what made them special. Same thing with Hal. Hal Jordan is this fearless test pilot. He is without fear. Like he has this iron will, but he's also a huge screw up, right?
Yeah.
He's rash. He's rash and impulsive, and he can be kind of stupid sometimes. He makes mistakes. he doesn't seem like a superhero necessarily. And then over time, we see him become one of the greatest ever. John Stewart is the Green Lantern who was born to do it. To me, he was the one who was the obvious choice. He's an architect. He has the mind for building things. He's the guy who just has to be building all the time. He's the leader of soldiers. He's just a dominant warrior and leader and tactician, and he can just do anything. He's just like the perfect Green Lantern. He's the obvious choice. And we got to show that in the Dark Crisis Worlds Without a Justice League issue. We got to show John in a world in which there was never any Justice League, and he was the only, like Superman is Green Lantern. Like John Stewart is the only superhero that they have, really, at least until he forms his own Green Lantern team. And I am kind of tired of seeing him boiled down to just a very simplistic version of himself. Like very often when you see him in the context of a team, of a big team, so as a writer, whenever you get a big team of characters, sometimes you have to kind of get across who a character is very briefly, concisely. So that's when you see the Justice League interact, you might hear Superman says something really hopeful and kind, and then Batman says something scowly and cruel, and Flash says something funny and quippy, and Wonder Woman does not use contractions when she speaks. It's all very, and then they'll have John Stewart say something, some military jargon, some kind of military phrase as imagined by civilians. And there's just so much more to him than that. I don't want him to just be seen as like, yeah, I used to be in the Marines and that's why I talk all tough all the time. That's just not enough. So I want to show a much more complicated version of John that shows why he's the greatest ever. Some of the comics talk about his mother a little bit.
Yeah.
Where very briefly, like just a woman who was very involved in the civil rights movement in the United States when Black people got the right had greater rights as part of American society. She was one of those leaders alongside people like Martin Luther King and
Malcolm X
and all the Medgar Evers and all these great leaders. She was one of those people. So she was his big inspiration, There's also comics that talk about his younger sister who died. So there are elements to his character that never really come up in the comics, and I would like to be a bigger part of his story. So we're going to see John the architect, the ex-Marine, the Green Lantern Corps member, of course, the brother, the son. I just want to show more of him.
The hero, of course.
The hero. And I want to show his potential. We in Dark Crisis World Without a Justice League, we saw John at his highest potential, like what he is capable of, with like this crazy godlike power. And I want to see him. So in our story coming up, he meets somebody from that universe who knows what John is capable, and then John is now. He's an ex-Green Lantern now, because now the as we've seen in the Jeremy Adams book, the Green Lanterns are not, the Guardians are all gone, and now the Green Lanterns are now controlled by the United Planets, and it's a very different kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And John is no longer a member; he's retired, and he's gone home to take care of his mother, who's dealing with the end of her life. And so he goes home to take care of his mom, and so now the Green Lantern stuff is behind him. He's done with the Green Lantern Corps, but universe isn't done with him, so we'll see what happens.
Did he call?
Also, I also want to show, Hal Jordan has Sinestro. I want John to have his own Sinestro.
There wasn't the first issue. I think it begins with this Nemesis thing.
Yeah, the Revenant Queen. Are you talking about the Dark Crisis issue or the backups?
I think it's the first issue.
Green Lantern #1?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Revenant Queen, right? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, her first introduction, we first see the Revenant Queen in the Warworld saga in Action Comics. There's a scene in when Bila Esh, the storyteller, the Philosian storyteller, and he's like a slave, telling stories to slave kids. And he's telling stories about Superman, and some of those stories have not happened yet. He tells the story of Superman versus Doomsday, and we see kind of a stylized version. Like, we get to see a fun version of that is stylized and changed for the story that he's telling, but it's very clearly he's talking about Doomsday. And then he talks about when he teamed up with this League of Emerald Knights against the Radiant Dead and their leader, the Revenant Queen. And that was all and that was before I got the call to do Green Lantern. But I thought that I might get the opportunity sometime, so I went and dropped it in there.
Oh,
so now it's gonna
read it right now.
maybe.
Yeah, I'm excited, man.
Then we can assume that there will be a crossover between action and maybe Green Lantern War Journal. Maybe.
I hope so.
Oh,
I hope so. But either way, like I do have threads in Action Comics that also tie in with threads that I'm building now in Green Lantern. And I just want to, I have good relationships at DC. I hope to continue to do a lot of work there. And I do want those stories to all kind of come together at some point and inform each other, make them all feel like part of a big shared universe.
it's amazing.
Thanks.
Well, sir, we're gonna end the interview with you. Thanking you for your time and for your for sharing your thoughts and those behind the scenes that we really enjoy.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. So, real quick, somebody has sent. There have been some questions in the comments.
I might some.
Let me try to answer a few questions real quick. And there's also this one guy who asked for a story. There's an artist in here, Damien. Damien Navarro said, "Mr. Johnson, I'm Damien."
Sorry.
It's towards the very end.
Let me here.
There it is. Yeah. He's doing sample pages and he wants a short story pitch. All right. Okay. Shoot. All right. Give me a story about John Constantine, in which he's in a card game against evil creatures in the DC universe. They're all playing this big card game, and John loses. And he uses he does, like, the other characters don't know it, but Deadman is at the table as well, and he helps John to cheat somehow. All right, how that happens, I'll let you decide. So Deadman's characters, he can inhabit anyway, I'll let you figure it out. So yeah, Deadman secretly helps John Constantine to cheat in cards against other, like, evil characters. So
you want a pitch, Damien? There you have it.
There you go.
Would you like to write stories for Hellblazer or John Constantine?
Yes, I would.
Please,
especially if you love horror. That's
please.
An eye candy for you.
I would love to. In fact, there's a story coming up. I think it's probably going to be issues 9 and 10 about a character named Frozen Charlotte. That I originally conceived of as a Hellblazer character, like a Hellblazer villain, and but I'm going to use it. I decided I changed it kind of over time, and now it's going to be a Hulk villain. It's going to be the fallen angel creepy thing. So it's going to be cool. Frozen Charlotte is the name. I don't know what you would call it in Spanish, but it's a term for these little porcelain, like molded porcelain dolls, usually very small, like just one piece. Yeah. So it wouldn't, not like how some dolls will have like cloth bodies, but like a porcelain head.
Yes.
Frozen Charlotte dolls are just entire porcelain and like might be wearing a little dress or something. But anyway, so Frozen Charlotte is the name of a creature that I created. Originally I thought of it as a Hellblazer character.
But, nowadays here Hellblazer is very, very hot in our country because they republish another saga. So
Oh, good.
Yeah, recently they published the first arc from Garthani's run, Dangerous Habits. So they are
nice.
all crazy about John Constantine here in Argentina.
Yeah, but
They are
I
reading
did a show.
Hellraiser.
I did a show about the first run from Jamie Delano, so I love it.
Oh, cool. That's a great one.
Really love it.
I think my favorite Constantine series, my favorite Hellblazer run is probably Andy Diggle. He did the Laughing Magician. He had that really amazing villain that was he was called Mako. He was like a Sudanese war mage, where he would find other magicians in the world and like eat their brain and try to consume their power into himself. So he had the power of like dozens of magicians that he had cannibalized. He was super scary and powerful. He was great. All right. Good luck, Damien. Can't wait to see that. Damien, show me those pages online when you're done with them.
Here's another one that I marked. And what do you consider was your most risky job?
Maximiliano, if you're still on here, do you mean like what's the most risky job I've done in my life, or do you mean like the most risky like writing thing I've done?
Writing, I think. Writing is writing.
I think it means
writing.
Okay.
Writing.
Because I have done some dangerous stuff, but if he means writing,
yeah, you were in the army, sir.
Yeah, I'm active duty now.
Oh.
But I don't. It's not the kind of job. I'm not getting shot at though. It's not that kind of thing. I played trumpet with one of the military bands in the Washington D.C. area.
Oh
yeah.
So we're primarily ambassadors. I mean, we are all trained. Like we all went to basic training, and we're soldiers. But our day-to-day job, we're not like kicking indoors. It's a different kind of thing.
Oh.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. So mostly, I do travel a lot with my job. I travel mostly the continental United States, and sometimes we'll go overseas for a series of performances over there. But anyway,
and you got a band, a jazz band.
Yeah, I'm in the Army Field Band in Washington D.C. It's one of the what they call the premier bands that play in the Capitol. But mostly we play on tour for the American people. We kind of just try to keep the will of the American people behind their army. So kind of get out there and tell stories about our colleagues who were out there doing the hard thing. Let's see. My riskiest job as a writer, though. Actually, that's easy. Okay, so they asked me at Marvel. They asked me to write the tie-in, the Captain America tie-in to the Al Ewing event called Empire. You remember Empire?
Yeah.
It's like the alien invasion thing.
Yeah.
Oh, Christopher says he likes my statue. That's actually not Darkseid though.
It's Batman. It's Batman.
Yes, from Dark Knight Returns. Check it out.
Yep.
It's Batman and Superman from Dark Knight Returns.
This is my only statue, except for a couple that I got. Well, my only comic book statue. And I saw this in this comic store in Annapolis, Maryland, and I loved it. But it was also really expensive, and I don't really spend money on this kind of stuff. So I was like, I'm not going to get it. But when you sign at Third Eye as a creator, they give you 40% off whatever you want in the store that day. So I was like, whenever I get a book made and I do a signing in Third Eye, I'm going to get that statue. And that's what I did. That's why I had the statue.
Of course.
Yeah,
I know you can't see it, but there's a little hole in the bat tank here. And Carrie Kelly, the Robin in that story, has a little slingshot pointed at us. Can you see her?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing
There she
detail.
is.
Isn't that cool?
Amazing detail.
It's okay.
I do have I have a couple other little statues that come with video games, like special edition video games. Like I've got this from God of War.
God of War, yeah. Kratos.
And I've got what else do I have here? I've got this actually is from the New York Times. This is not a statue, obviously.
Yeah.
This is George Gustinas, a friend of mine who writes at his primary job at the New York Times is not as a writer, but he has written a lot of stuff about comics for the New York Times. And when they were doing a lot of construction on that building, they gave everyone in the building a hard hat. When they came into work, they had to put this on. And when I was there, he showed me his office, his cubicle rather, his workspace, and this thing was sitting there. And he gave it to me for my son. And so this is his. There's no place for him to put it, so it sits on my desk. But this belongs to my son, so it has George's name on it. So anyway, and I got his little Captain America shoes when he was a baby, and that's about it. Anyway, sorry for that tangent. What were we talking about before that guy talked about the statue?
Risky job.
Risky job. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
So Empire was this big line-wide event, like a Fantastic Four Avengers crossover kind of.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of other books involved too. And they asked me, I'm the soldier, I'm the active duty soldier that they know. So they were like, why don't you do the Captain America tie-in? So there was a 3-issue Captain America story, and they said, we want you to tell a story about Captain America rallying all the armies of Earth and leading them against the Katati threat. The Katati are like these plant aliens that are invading. And gave us 3 issues. So I did that. I did a story about Captain America, and I said I could have them leading like SHIELD or whatever. And they were like, actually, SHIELD's not around anymore. I'm like, okay. So then I could give them a team of American soldiers and, like a new Howling Commandos, except from like regular army soldiers, and try to make it more interesting. So we did that. And there's some people online who knew that I was in the army, and they thought I was just putting this big, I thought I was putting out a big U.S. Army propaganda book, like not understanding that was the whole point. Like they told me specifically to do a book about Captain America leading regular soldiers. That's what they told me to do. And then not long after that, they announced that I was going to do Superman, and everyone got real nervous because they thought I was going to be, make it all political. But anyway, so that was a risky job because a lot of people in the a lot of comics fans, a lot of the comics community in the United States are very, lately, especially after the era of Trump and everything, are very mistrustful of authority, mistrustful of police or of government or whatever. So when I wrote that book about Cap and his U.S. Army buddies, they thought that was my commentary on comics. So it was a risk, and now we know that. Later on, I got a call from somebody else, another editor, to do a Thunderbolts book, and they wanted me to have U.S. agents as the leader of that team.
Oh,
I was like, fuck no, man. I'm not.
Yeah,
I think that's a terrible idea. I think you need to find somebody else. The idea is fine. It just can't be me, So they got somebody else.
Yeah, right. You're right.
Well, sir, we don't want to make you.
We're gonna disturb you anyway.
We don't bother you anymore.
No,
we're gonna thank you. Please stay while we say goodbye, and we say goodbye in Spanish, please.
Sure.
Gente, acá estamos con el señor Philip Kennedy Johnson. Espero que les haya gustado. Muchas gracias por el apoyo y nos estamos viendo en el próximo episodio de Protagonistas del Cómic con otro gran protagonista del cómic.
Nos vemos. Chao, gracias.